Is this recording? I don't know. Yeah, it's recording. There we go. Okay. Uh. I don't know why I'm carrying on like inflicting you on my insomnia videos, but I had a bit of sleep, and then all of a sudden I started thinking, and that's never a good thing. Seriously, I mean it's like 11 o'clock at night. I should be like going off into deep dark sleep. I want to apologize, and I want to apologize profusely. And I want to apologize profusely to anyone that I've hurt. As a result of my rantings and my ravings and every single thing that I've said here, which has hurt anybody in any way whatsoever if they have a different form of way of looking at magic, occult, witchcraft, and religion and spirituality of any type whatsoever. Alright, I want to apologize profusely. I am a very passionate individual, and I've got some very strong ideas that I want to bring into the world, and there are changes of attitude within magic, occultism, witchcraft, and paganism, which I want to try and implement. That is one of the reasons I'm here. I don't want you to be unhappy because of me. I don't want you to be unhappy because of what I said, but although I have made you unhappy, and if you understood that I've got two things going on with me simultaneously. Number one, intense guilt that I've made you feel unhappy. Intense guilt. And on the other hand, an intense desire to try and create a world which is better. In order to try and create a world which is better, I have acted as a deist, and as a deist I have attacked things which I have regarded as being wrong, and therefore not assisting in intellectual progression or indeed spiritual progression of individuals. I have come across lots of confused, complicated ideas when I've been investigating magic myself, through meeting people who profess to be magicians. I developed animosity inside me, for which I feel guilt. Intense guilt and intense remorse. And this is a personal failing on my part. It's a personal failing on my part because I have not seen within magic and within paganism and within Wicca what I would like to see. I would like to see a group of millions of highly intelligent people who have the capacity to experiment and to explore and to try and find out what's really real, to compare and contrast different arguments and different approaches, and therefore to try and work out what is real and what is true and what we can explain to people. My personal goal would be to create an approach which the most skeptical atheistic individuals would still be able to do, and will eventually create an anomalous experience which will then demonstrate to them that there is something else going on here rather than just physical reductionist universe. This is where my passion has been, and in reality has always been. Within this world, in order to try and create that kind of change, there are ways in which it can be done. And the ways so far have involved a lot of supernatural fiction. A lot of religions or religious interpretations. And a lot of people who are like me, but from a different point of view, and are passionately expressing their points of view. In many cases, and I'm considering myself guilty, the passion itself on any side of things overtakes the ability to explain things in a reasonable manner. The necessity on the part of some people to demonstrate and to prove that there is something out there has led to all manner of different issues and obstacles and attitude problems. When I was in the pagan movement, I was a very screwed up kid. I was looking for a miracle for my health. It was not there. That is not the failing of the pagan movement, which exists to provide a sense of security and stability for the practitioner, a sense of identity for the practitioner, and a space psychologically in which they can explore spiritual principles and exercises. In that respect, I adore the entire pagan movement, root to branch. But the process of trying to bring about some variety of change of ideas has led to problems in terms of reasoning and in terms of explanation. The problems in terms of reasoning and explanation affected me negatively and affected other people, especially young people, who got involved within magic, occult, paganism, and witchcraft. I feel for all of those who have been negatively affected and influenced by this. And yes, I would have to say that there is plenty of opportunities within a unregulated spirituality where there are heterogeneous groups and heterogeneous individuals, all of whom who have strong interpretations of what needs to be done. This again creates separation rather than connection. This creates separation between individuals and also separation between groups, which can create more animosity and more fighting each other. During my day, we're talking about my late teens, early 20s, I also could see quite clearly that there were some forms of political groups who were infiltrating slowly various denominations within what we could roughly call alternative spirituality. This was another frightening thing. Not only was it frightening, but I also saw the people who were approaching the subject from a point of view of interest in religion. I saw these people accepting this. I saw these people lapping it up. I saw these people getting influenced and programmed by it. This also scared me. Again, during my day, during one particular group that I was a part of, there was evidence of certain forms of ideology, which I personally would consider wrong. A political ideology which in some countries is developing quite nicely, and I would still regard as being rather wrong, because it is an attitude against innocent people who are different. I feel that this is something that people need to be aware of, and I think that people need to work through it. I also feel that a much more intellectual base for faith in general, of any type, needs to be put forward, and therefore a case for it needs to be put forward. I approach this from the point of view of what would be commonly called the occult tradition, which I personally regard as being the exploration into nature using a variety of meditative, prayerful, and altered state of consciousness practice, combined with forms of psychological operations using theological concepts, which might or might not be true, because none of us know 100%. Because we can't. Yes, I have done a video in which I have made a statement about entities, and I have made a statement that these things appear to be real. And yes, under some particular weird circumstances, such as the more open circumstances, the more transcendental states. I mean, we're talking about like proper high up shit, whereby, you know, many more layers of the aura can be seen and so on and so forth. Then there are some variety of things which appear to be entities in those states. Is there a hypothetical possibility that Nick is actually delusional and slightly mad? There's a possibility that each and every single one of us have some variety of perceptual or cognitive aberrations, or indeed possibly brain chemistry problems, which could also be affecting us. We also have to question whether the process towards psychic development is necessarily something which can be done without losing your marbles or with losing your marbles. I also have to question whether it is a good idea to have the growth of conspiracy theory ideas within the paranormal culture. It doesn't necessarily seem to me to be that the progressive and alternative spiritual world is, in every area, necessarily progressive. In fact, it seems that there's rather a lot of regressive attitudes which also need work. My personal interest is to focus on the spiritual and the supernatural because there is something of interest there which could hypothetically be useful for human beings to understand each other better, to communicate better, and also for human well-being. And I think that trying to focus on these things is a valuable, beneficial goal. When we're approaching things such as magic and witchcraft, why are we doing it? What are we looking for? Aleister Crowley seemed to imply that the purposes of magic was not necessarily to create change and heal people. Instead, he seemed to imply that it was to do with working out what you really are rather than what you fondly believe yourself to be. However, I still fail to understand in what particular way one can make it, let's say, a career decision between working in purchase ledger and credit control, or whether you should be working in accountancy or law, or whether you should be cleaning in a restaurant, or whether you should be cleaning in a community center, or whether you should be not being a cleaner at all and should be studying something, or should not be studying something and will be better off being a cleaner. I'm not quite sure where that is there. And I don't think that there has been sufficient explanation to try and break down the introspective, analytical path that he's talking about, but not, in a manner which actually could be said to be a contributing factor in people's progression of understanding about themselves. When we look specifically at religion, religion is often regarded as being for self-development. In places, it is a place of self-development, and it is a place of emotional and psychological healing, which needs to be encouraged. Alright? I feel that religion needs to be encouraged. Some people out there don't. I think it does. And I think people need to be encouraged to find spirituality in some respect. Just like John Lucas created the characters of the Jedi in Star Wars to try and bring a spirituality into young people. That's essentially was part of the purpose, so I understand. And I feel that this gives you a sense of peace, a sense of belonging in the natural world, however we describe it, and a sense of personal inner strength in terms of maybe being able to cope a little bit better with some of the very difficult things which happen in life. And in the real world right now, there's many things which is going to disturb people, and you'd have a much better time in life if there's something to ground you and to give you a feeling of higher power, a sense of presence, a sense of personal empowerment, and ideally clarity of thought. I struggle to understand when there is aspects of alternative spirituality which goes against that, and there are some forms of expression which can reduce an individual's ability to analyze how things are in the world. When I look at some of the key buzzwords and concepts expressed through occultism, witchcraft, and paganism, I see that there's some aspects of this which aren't necessarily too wholesome. In my opinion, please, if I am wrong, we have a comment section. Please tell me off. Tell me off brutally for what I'm saying here. Especially, and of course some of you people know, I was interested in the debates all those years ago between the theists and the atheists, and I saw and I learned how, truth is discovered. And that was very interesting, seeing it actually being played out amongst people. And I learned to use that to criticize myself, because I needed it. You see, I needed to tackle some of my beliefs, and I used the attacks that the atheists did against the theists as a means of clearing up where I was right and where I was wrong. This enhanced my personal spirituality through giving me the ability to challenge what I'm really about. I came to a few conclusions. Number one, that I am not wrong to have my spiritual interpretations. I am wrong to look at those interpretations from a simplistic point of view. I am right to try and analyze what actually happened, and I am right, in my opinion, to apply something even as basic as middle school scientific thought to what I'm experiencing, which is one of the things I've been trying to communicate during the, 17 years that I have had the great pleasure of being here as a, not quite an employee of Google, but someone who gets a couple of quid from a bit of advertising revenue once in a while, and having that blessing. I acknowledge from personal experience that strange things do happen. I acknowledge by personal experience that under some strange circumstances, the precise combination of which we still will not 100% know, because it appears to be to do to a certain extent with the state of body and mind at the time, and also how you have, using hypothetical spiritual language, rearranged the aura, the chakras, and the rest of it as a result of faith-based activity over a long enough period of time. This can lead to the ability to open up and have the strange experiences. When we're looking at the explanation of these things, again, clarity has to be foremost. When we are given terms such as, again, please forgive me for being quite so intense with this one particular factor, but it works. I need, as a person who wants specific, reliable results, those terms properly defined. Specifically, what is it? Specifically, what works? Specifically, what aspect of what it is does what? If there are components to different varieties of exercises, what is their form and function? Let's say the saltwater bath, meditating with some candlelight, preparing to cast a circle, chanting, visualizing, working on the body scan meditation, working on the opening of the chakras, working on ascension meditation. What specifically do they do? Why do we put them together? And then there's the physical attributes, the actual things that people do for spell casting, such as sigillation, drumming, raising energy, meditation, chanting, invocation, evocation, the drawing of the triangle, and the invocation of the spirits in the triangle. Under what particular state of mind and what particular approach do we need to be in for various different exercises? I have been passionate also about the book by Silver Muldoon and Harewood Carrington, The Projection of the Astral Body, because after the 2 years that I took it seriously, and we're talking about proper obsessive seriously, it happened. And I had a lot of fun during that phase in my life, I can tell you. It was wonderful and weird. The very fact that during my earlier days I was able to, let's not use that phrase because it would be bad language. See what I mean? I've got to be careful about the language I'm using so I don't delude you. I don't say I was able to. That makes it seem like it would be as quick and reliable as turning on a dial or a switcher and turning on an electric light. But no, at that time, for some reason, all my ducks were in a row for some particular things to occur, so I could have essentially those prophetic dreams that went on for a fair few months and scared the living shite out of me, but showed me again that there's something else going on. Human consciousness does not seem to be purely bound to the body, nor does it seem to be bound purely to time. And yes, things in the future seem to be seen at times under weird circumstances, which is one of the things which inspired me to start looking into tarot, which then became a cornerstone of my personal practices, a way in which I explore different forms of spiritual and theological concepts through the various different art designs of different divination decks. Okay? I've come to an understanding and a conclusion that things such as aesthetics and art style affect consciousness and energy. But the focus exclusively upon aesthetics and art style can distract us away from trying to analyze what is happening energetically, what is happening psychically, what is happening spiritually during these exercises. Again, this video is my apology and my explanation. Do not get me wrong. I seek to encourage you in your spirituality 100%, in any way that you choose it. But I want you to do it like an adult. I want you to do it with a level of questioning and skepticism. When you're face to face in a church community, in a religious community, in a pagan circle, people speak and words swirl around. Ideas develop, and this thing called groupthink occurs. I have separated myself from groupthink because, from the point of view of cultural groupthink, there is a problem. Do you defend the tribe? Do you defend the identity? Or do you defend the search for the truth? When one defends one's tribe and one's identity, one is receiving from other people revelations in terms of patterns of speech, in terms of facial expression, in terms of attitude to various different things. You find yourself, when in a room full of people who are discussing various spiritual things, subtly swept up. Now, this could be in any environment. If you were to, let's say, spend 6 months exclusively watching conspiracy theory videos, you'll end up in a very different state than you're exclusively watching videos about classical music. How is the 6 months worth of watching videos about classical music affecting you? How is the 6 months worth of watching conspiracy theory videos affecting you? How is the environment that you are in with people also affecting you? All of these things are stimuli to your mind. Your mind is a very complicated organism. It has lots of different layers going back even as far as your infancy, and there may even be situations from the day when you were born which could still be having an effect upon you psychologically. This is pretty much known to people who explore themselves in a very meditative, in-depth way. This is known to those within the psychoanalytic world. We are complicated. We have had influences. We have had, throughout the time of our life, made lots of little decisions on the way, and some of those decisions have affected us positively or negatively. Some of them have affected us subtly, and some more dramatically. Then it is a question of what those influences are, and how they should realistically be put into effect. And then there's also a question of, why are we doing what we're doing? Motive, reason. And also, are we analyzing how we are growing from the books that we're reading, as well as the conversations that we're having? This is where I am coming from as an individual. I have seen and heard of and had conversations with people who've gone through a fair few things due to, I would say, in plain English, some lack of safeguarding within pagan circles. There's therefore a certain level of concern as to how pagan spirituality exists and how it is developing. Paganism is good, but it has problems within it. And when there is dogmatic adherence to a particular conceptualization of what, let's say, the true northern tradition is, or whatever the true Wicca is, or whatever the true Christianity is, or Judaism, or Islam, or paganism, or anything. there can be problems. Because in reality, the more I look at these things, and this is me talking as an individual, everything just melts into some variety of universal deism. I perceive very little difference between the religions in reality. And I see them all as being part of the historical progression, probably from Zoroastrianism, or indeed the theology which came before then, which permeated its way through into eventually it became Zoroastrianism into Judaism, and then from Judaism into God alone knows what else. From Abraham onwards, we got all kinds of weird stuff happening. And now there's 33,000 Christian denominations in the world, and it's all really rather complex, and they probably all hate each other and are fighting each other too, and I really would like us to stop doing that. Alright, this whole concept that we have of being set apart as people, or feeling the need to be set apart for the purposes of propagating an ideology, or a concept of it, or a sense of imagined community, can, as it progresses, cause problems. I feel a level of anxiety about this. I feel a level of concern as to where the world is going. And I feel